Alright, let's have a look at version 2 of the Play car. So this is the design for version 2, and in the first video I mentioned a few things with version 1 that was problematic and things I wanted to change. One of them being that the assembly process was tedious and complicated. So for this version I opted for a solution with a lower part count and utilizing a larger 3D printer. So here we have a front half and a rear half instead of all of those split parts seen in version 1. Another thing I wanted to do with this car over version 1 was to make this one electric. And at the time I didn't know if that meant that this one would be solely an outdoor use car or if it would still be appropriate to also use it indoors during the winter, for example. So I decided to not make it that much larger than the first version. So this one is just slightly wider at 360 millimeters, and the length is still the 700 millimeters approximately for the body. The reasoning for this is that the previous version 1 form factor was very suitable for indoor use, and going much larger than that would make it clumsy. So later on, when I decided on the electrical system for the car, it became clear that the driving characteristics of the car would definitely make it more suitable for an outdoor use only car. What I did decide for was to utilize hoverboard components, or more specifically in this case the hoverboard motors. So back here I modeled the fastening interface for pieces of the hoverboard frame. This car, then being electric, meant some more additions to the car in terms of batteries back here and controls for the steering wheel or the handlebars up here. I opted for hand controls over pedal controls because I thought it would be easier for a small child's motoring skills to utilize hand controls over pedals, as well as removing the possibility of the car driving away by accidentally stepping on the throttle before hands are secured on the steering wheel. For batteries, I later attached fastening interfaces, snap fastening interfaces for Ryobi power tool batteries. Utilized two 18-volt batteries in series to form a system of 36 volt, which is the same system voltage as in the hoverboard. Underneath here is the compartment for the e-bike controllers, one on each side here, controlling one motor each. If we look at the transparency view, The same ideas around these aligning sockets for strips of sheet material exist in this car as well as they did in the version 1 car, and the assembly process for this one was so much easier than version 1, so no complaints there. Inside the car are also these channels for all the electrical wiring from and to the batteries, the controllers, and then up here to the handlebars through this like steering head. In the front of the car I utilized the same principles as the version 1, a rigid front assembly, wooden rods to take the load and also act as interface for a bumper. At the time I thought that I had to make the steering spindles out of metal when the car was going to be driven outside and also be propelled by electrical motors, but later revisions showed that that was completely unnecessary, even though this particular version of the car had metal steering spindles. The front wheels, they were salvaged from version 1, and while they worked, it also became evident that they weren't providing a good enough ride. So too thin of a cushioning zone in these thin tires, and the same applied to the rear part of the car with the hoverboard motors. Just very stiff tires, and I later on replaced the hoverboard tires with printed TPU tires that were a little bit more cushioned than the stock hoverboard tires, but still this car ended up being a very rough ride when picking up speed over bumpy surfaces. Adding to this was also the fact that the rear half of the car had no specific like seat apart from the modeled plastic seat. So during use of the car we actually added some cushioning on top of the seat here to make the ride a bit more pleasant. For the handlebars I opted for this kind of finger throttle interface from some electric scooter, and that one was fitted as close as possible to this handlebar here, but this was clearly a mistake, because first and foremost a small child hand barely being big enough to reach the finger throttle, and then when the hand being in that position and just holding on to the handlebar when applying throttle, the body's inertia when the car is jerking away meant that even more throttle would be applied. So this solution with the steering wheel and the scooter throttle was quickly replaced by a bike handlebar that was trimmed down a little bit, and a thumb throttle interface instead, which was a much better way to go. Alright, I want to show also the remains of the second version of the car, and it's here, and it's not as disassembled and in as bad shape as version 1, because this one has just been stowed away and some parts has been taken from it. The parts that have been removed are the motors and one of the controllers underneath here, as well as the bumpers. But apart from that, I think it's fairly complete and would be up and running in no time if I wanted to. Things to convey here with the physical version that wasn't shown in the CAD, and some experiences from this car is, for example, the battery interface. So we have the two inserts here with click inserts for the Ryobi Power Tool batteries. Works like this, and that is firmly secured there now, and the car will not work with only one, but if you connect the second one, they are connected in series and you have power to the car. This battery solution had some pros and cons, and the most notable pro, I would say, is that the batteries are off the shelf, they are ready, they have a BMS already, and they have this state of charge indicator. That's very handy. But there are also many cons. And for the batteries itself, they are quite expensive for how much energy they contain. It's also a downside that I sometimes wanted to use these batteries, but they were occupied with the kids playing with the car. And lastly, the position of these batteries wasn't helping the center of gravity of this car in combination with the rear axle placement. So being that the battery weight that far back, the seating position almost above the rear axle if the driver was sitting far back, and the fairly aggressive e-back controllers that were used in this car, the car would wheelie with hard throttle input and good grip surface like asphalt or tarmac. So that wasn't great for small kids. Of course, this controller had multiple driving modes, so it was seldomly driven in the higher modes due to the speed it also could pick up. Other things that wasn't shown in the CAD, these are the cutouts from the hoverboard. So they are just parts of the frame. So these are the outer tips of the frame with the fastening interface for the motors. So that was the reason to use these pieces. Then we also have the metal steer spindles in the front here. Turned out to be completely unnecessary, but of course they were rock solid for this car. The steering components here, they are a little bit more tucked away than version 1, but I didn't end up managing to put them up above these wooden rods, which would have been where I wanted to go in the beginning, but there were some compromises in the design given the size restrictions, etc. So the steering had to go down there. So for this one, the ground clearance was better than the first car, but as you can see from this view here, these ball joints, they were still the lowest point of the car. This is one of the first drives with the steering wheel and the finger throttle, so a bit jerky, and they are also not that accustomed to driving yet. Here is a bit later with the steering wheel changed to handlebars, and I think they are driving at the next to highest setting, and they have also practiced driving a lot more. And this is the last clip of climbing a slope, also at the lowest speed setting. So this car is very torquey and strong and can climb as long as there is grip.
Alright, that was version 2 of the Play car. Next up will be an episode about version 3, and I have 2 iterations of that design here, and this is a very different design compared to version 2, with a lot of improvements on the flaws that were identified during the use of version 2. So if you are interested in this technical journey, please stay tuned, and thank you for watching.